heavy rainfalls. First time I went to Bangladesh after 21 years, the rainfall scared me than anything else. It has been estimated 2015, 1 in every 7 person in Bangladesh will be displaced. 18 million people may have to move because of sea level rising, a serious concern for all of us. Bangladesh 2050 will be 11% of land losing, 15 million displaced. Drinking water is already contaminated and have already been affecting many people's health and well-being. The 1991 cyclone affected 140,000 people, displaced 10 million and killed 140,000. So climate change is very serious for us, for all of us. People who deny climate change is not a thing of the reality. Just look outside your doorstep. Look at the climate changing. So it's not just the world outside, it's affecting everyone. Last week, our Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, attended the COP26 conference held in Scotland and currently going. She told the rich world leaders that they must fulfill both their own carbon emission pledges and keep the promises to help developing countries. Because promises are not enough. And sometimes everybody makes promises to look good, but when it depends on other people's life, it's critical.
I'm here today to demand something's being done. That isn't an indictment of the fact that we cannot, that is not an indictment of the fact that we cannot stop this change. It's an indictment of the political system we live in at the moment. For the last 30 years, they have argued about who is going to pay for it. Let's be clear, they're not arguing about the likes of us paying for it, as Rumal was talking about the poor people in Bangladesh. They are arguing about which countries and which multinationals are going to lose out. They're not arguing about the millions of people that are going to lose their jobs as they shift away from the emissions, if they shift away. What we need is a system that puts our needs before that of profit. And the only way that is going to happen is if we build a political force and an industrial response that demands, not only demands, but takes control of the commanding heights of the economy and the banks. Unless we do that, all that will happen again is that we'll meet in a couple of years to bemoan the fact they still haven't done anything, because they're clear they do not have the answers. We have the answers. We need to we need to fight for socialism to fight climate change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm marching today because the fight for climate justice is the fight for social justice. In my house windows, I've got Stop Aquin posters on display, and one day my 6-year-old niece asked me, "Auntie, what is Stop Aquin?" And I explained to her that Aquin was a company trying to bring an electricity cable from France to England, which in the process would harm our city, green spaces and wildlife. She looked horrified and said, "But Auntie, why would anyone want to hurt our wildlife? I love nature." My niece's response is spot on, and it is that simple. Why would anyone want to damage our environment, wildlife or biodiversity? For greed, profit, corruption? For too long, greedy people in this world have got away with putting profit before people and our planet, and it has to stop now. After all, the world's richest 1% causes double the CO2 emissions. There is a deep injustice at the heart of the climate crisis. But I have to admit, a few years ago, I wouldn't have called myself an environmental campaigner. For over a decade, I'd campaign around social justice issues, everything from stopping cuts to domestic violence services to fighting against gentrification. But as the years have gone on and global warming is getting closer to the point of no return, I came to the realisation that every action has to be about responding to the climate emergency. I got involved with environmental campaigning, not just because it became imperative, but because I realised the fight for environmental justice is the fight for social justice. Why should we put up with homes that are freezing and that we can't afford to heat? Why should we tolerate jobs that are bad for workers' health and pollute our planet? How can we celebrate all the strides we make in the fight for equality if the air we breathe is toxic? And working class communities are more likely to bear the brunt of the climate crisis, even though they are less likely to be the ones causing it. Here, in Charles Dickens' ward, which has the highest levels of deprivation in the city, also has the lowest levels of car ownership, and yet they experience the highest levels of pollution. The climate crisis is unjust in who is most impacted, which is why the fight for climate justice has to involve everyone. And while consensus is building for achieving net zero carbon emissions, we need the response to be bolder, more radical and faster. At a local level, we need a city-wide carbon audit so that we can fully grasp what the biggest polluters are in our city. We need citizens' assembly so that the response to the climate emergency comes from the bottom up. At a national level, we need urgent divestment from the fossil fuel industry, a Green New Deal and a nationwide home retrofitting programme. Not to mention the public ownerships of buses, rail and water, so all additional funds are ploughed back into investing in our infrastructure and not lining shareholders' pockets. While the challenge ahead of us is enormous, the solutions are simple. Keep up the fight because, as Greta Thunberg says, we need less blah 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 and more action. Solidarity.
From Stephen Morgan, MP for Portsmouth South. That one's better. You're talking about this one. Hello everybody. This is one of the most important things we can do together in Portsmouth. Please urge your neighbours and friends to come to these sorts of protests more and more until we can get this crisis resolved. This is one of the most serious things. It is the most serious thing we face. Statement. I'm just here to read the statement from Stephen Morgan MP, whose spirit is here, but who can't be here himself this morning. I'm going to read it out. As world leaders gather in Glasgow to discuss the biggest challenge our planet faces, it's vital that the government leads by example at home and abroad, and delivers for people and the planet. As host of COP26, Britain has a special responsibility to act. It'll take serious and sustained leadership from across the government for this summit to succeed. Yet, it continues to treat this summit as more of a photo opportunity than bring with it the diplomatic acumen we require. When we needed the government pulling in the same direction, we've had infighting and undermining of the UK's moral authority. They've been telling countries to end coal use, but licensing a massive new oil field off the Scottish coast. They're calling for countries investing green transitions at home while failing to provide the investment and support for households and businesses to decarbonise. The government now needs to end the double talk on climate and tell the truth about where we are. That means climate action at home. Climate action, no more. As Greta Thunberg says, blah, blah, blah. We should be investing 28 billion additional every year till 2030 to tackle the climate crisis, creating secure jobs in the UK and supporting the most vulnerable by reversing the overseas aid cut. Government has also got to be focused on the pressurising the big polluters. Phasing out fossil fuels and ensuring a just transition for workers. Instead of dragging their feet on this, the government should be taking concrete action to mobilise private finance behind climate action by requiring financial institutions to publish their carbon footprint, the footprint of those they're funding, and crucially adopt credible 1.5 degrees centigrade aligned transition plans by 2023. Government failed to lay the ground for success at Glasgow, but we must not give up hope, and we must work to keep 1.5 degrees maximum alive. For Portsmouth, that means addressing problems our city has faced for years when it comes to dirty air, addressing poor recycling rates, making it easier and more accessible to walk and cycle around our communities, and tackling sewage pollution into our seas. For Britain and the world, it means matching rhetoric with action and delivering the outcomes we all so badly need from COP26. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Judith, for reading that statement. Portsmouth, again, It was part of the Wool Against Weapons campaign, where it joined with other bits to form a 7-mile scarf from Aldermaston to Burfield in 2014 to campaign against Trident. During this climate crisis, we have a particular focus. Military contributions to fossil fuel use and pollution should not be excluded from a nation's calculations and efforts. In 2016, Parliament opted to renew Trident and build a new submarine fleet. In March this year, the government announced a plan to raise the limit on the country's nuclear warheads to 260 against the United Nations Non-Proliferation Treaty. In Kyoto in 1997, the US government demanded that military greenhouse gas emissions be exempt from the negotiations. In 2015, the Paris Agreement allowed countries to choose whether to cut military emissions. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change obliges signatories to publish annual greenhouse gas emissions, but military emissions reporting is still voluntary and therefore often not included. There is no good reason for this loophole. War and the preparations for war emit huge quantities of greenhouse gases. They must all be included in limits, transparently reported and independently verifiable. They must include a country's overseas bases. They must not rely on offset schemes. We call on governments to be honest about their total emissions and include them in their reduction plans. Thank you.
Thank you. I now have Sue James from Global Justice Now. Thank you. Today's rally and march, as you know, is about climate justice. And there are lots of strands to climate justice, some British, some global. I want to talk about one which is about what we are actually owing to the poorest countries in the world. We all know, I think, that the worst effects of climate change are hitting the poorest people most, even though countries in the south have done the least to contribute to the climate crisis. It's deeply unfair and unjust. We need to help these countries switch to clean, renewable energy. We need to help them recover from climate disasters, and they need infrastructure to protect them against flooding and many other natural disasters. This was agreed more or less unanimously by rich countries way back in 2012, and at that stage they promised that they would be giving $100 billion in climate finance every year. Since that date, that target has never been met, and even worse, 2/3 to 3/4 of that money has been given as loans. So we're forcing the poorest countries into debt in the way they were years ago. It's appalling. We have to acknowledge, A, that the suffering is most in the poorest countries, and B, that we have done the most to cause it. We owe the poorest people to help them. We're calling for reparations, which is acknowledging the fact that we in Europe have caused at least 1/3 of the greenhouse gases currently causing global heating. So we're here in solidarity with the people in the global south, and we're calling for climate justice today. Thank you, Sue. So next we have Claire, Right to Repair, and Claire will be followed by Charlotte and Helen from the National Education Union.
Be a bit taller. I just want to say, oh my goodness, we had an amazing turnout of our young people yesterday, and with very, very passionate and articulate, especially young women in our city. So respect to the children of our city who are standing up. Well done, kids. quite a hard act to follow, I have to say. But today I'm here as part of the Repair Cafe in our city. And I want you just to imagine for a minute. You head off to a party, you're in the most stunning outfit, you're feeling confident, and people say to you, that is amazing. I've seen you at parties for the last little while. How have you got such an amazing wardrobe? And you say, I haven't, but we do. I want you to imagine that you have just moved into a new rental. You've moved there because the insulation in that place is so amazing. Your fuel bills are going to be massively cut. It's the most amazing place to live. The decor is not so good. Your phone rings, you pick it up. It's a mobile that you had for 7 years, but it is still up to date and the best thing since sliced bread. And it's your friend, and she's saying, do you know what? I'm just heading over with an electric cargo bike, and in it I've got a ladder, extendable poles, rolling brushes and paints. That's amazing. You say, how on earth have you got space to store all that stuff? And you're coming to help, thank you. And she says, I don't, but we do. Now I think we all know that all the stuff that we own and we use takes a huge amount of carbon to even produce in the first place. So for example, a laptop, it takes the same amount of CO2 as a flight from London to Berlin. It is a massive amount of carbon that we produce with the stuff that we have. And we know that we need to reduce our consumption. But you know what? We need to also imagine and know that this is totally possible while having brilliant lives. So we can, and these things already exist, we can borrow clothes. You know, the guys that are here today to see our amazing university in this city, when they graduate, aren't going to be buying gowns. They're going to be hiring them because they need them that once. So you can hire and you can borrow outfits for parties. You can use things like the Library of Things and places where you borrow things so that you don't have to always have kit for decorating houses. All these kind of things are possible. We need to imagine that future and know that these are possible. One of the challenges we've got though is on electronics, and in the UK we are the second largest producer of e-waste globally. I'm going to say that again because it's just horrendous. As this small nation, we produce the second largest amount globally of e-waste, and we need to change that. And at Repair Cafe, with community organisations across the country and Europe, we are calling on our leaders of business and of governments to change that, to make laws so that, for example, you don't have VAT charged on repair. If you want to get your mobile phone repaired in a local repair shop, you'll be paying 20% VAT. If you've got a luxury yacht and you want your luxury yacht repaired, I'm not sure there's too many of you here today, there's no VAT. How is that fair? We want things to be made longer. We want phones to last for like 10 years, not the 2, which is the average. And so what I just want to challenge us today is to think about when you next need to buy something, think about, can I borrow it? Can I repair it? Can I come along to a repair cafe or go to a local shop? And I know my time is up. So I also want you to call on our government, to contact your MPs and your petitions, do a web search for Right to Repair and call on them to make real change. Thank you. We have Charlotte and Helen from the National Education Union.
Good afternoon, and it's fantastic to see so many of you here, especially the children and the young people that have come out today. So thank you very much for joining us. As educators, we know how important protecting the planet is to our young people. We recognise that the young people we teach are going to be the ones that have the biggest impact on climate change, and yet they are the ones that have shown courage, knowledge and leadership in responding to this crisis. It was heartwarming yesterday to see the strength of feeling that meant so many young people missed a day of their education to strike for climate change. We stand in solidarity with you and want to ensure that never again do you have to be in a position where you choose between education and the right for your healthy planet. The National Education Union is proud to support this climate action. At our own conference this year, we passed policy which outlines the huge threats we face from climate change and ecological breakdown. We mandate the union to work with the school student movement, other unions, and campaign in informing and mobilising our members in support of actions up to and beyond COP26. We know the importance of listening to young people, and we ask our members and our reps to turn words into action. As part of this, the NEU members around the country have taken part in a Climate Learning Month in October and November in the run-up to COP26.
In our own primary schools in Portsmouth, the children have written messages that they wanted us to share with you, grown-ups and decision makers in Portsmouth today. Here are just a few of their messages. There's only one world. Please look after the planet and get rid of plastic. Stop dumping rubbish in the ocean. Do more walking instead of cars. Use up less electricity. Stop dropping litter. Use less plastic. Find out where the sources of pollution are coming from and stop them. I have 60 post-it notes here which all have fantastic, insightful messages from 8 to 11-year-olds, and as much as I'd love to, I don't have time to read them all. However, I have one more that I must share with you. If you help the environment, it will be much better for us in this world. This 8-year-old Portsmouth child already sees the climate injustice set to affect her generation. And as her teacher, and on behalf of all educators within the National Education Union, today I send a promise to her that we will do our very best to end this injustice. This week, the government announced the DfE's sustainability plan. Whilst there are parts of the plan that are welcome and that the NEU will be pleased to engage further on, we have to be aware that the current bar is set very low. This is just not good enough. We will campaign for the curriculum to ensure that every student leaves education climate literate and equipped with the skills and knowledge needed to tackle climate change, adapt to uncertainties and take part in building a more sustainable future. This must look at the values that underpin our system and project the sort of society we need, not just reproduce the one that is causing the problem. Our children know this, and now those with the power to act must do so for them without delay. Thank you.
This party, also a member of Unison, but today I'm speaking for Campaign Against Climate Change as one of their members. Campaign Against Climate Change is one of the constituent parts of the national COP26 coalition, calling protests in as many towns and cities across the UK as possible today. So, of course, we call on COP26 talks to set the course for real, effective and globally fair action to keep a safe operating space for humanity and the rest of life on Earth. But we have no illusions. We're 26 years of COP talks that have failed to secure our safety and have seen climate and ecological catastrophe develop and unfold and get worse year on year on year. We cannot rely on the sort of climate leaders that commit billions to oil drilling, road expansion, airport expansion, whilst at the same time restricting the rights of people like us today to protest, or the rights of workers to organise in their unions, or the rights of people to migrate or run from the horrors of climate catastrophes as they unfold around the world. If there's a path to global climate justice, it's not that way, and we will need to continue to fight on after these talks finish. But we can have hope, because we know the solutions exist. And we know that more people are more active and more networked on this than ever before. And we can have agency. We can have agency through building the democratic and cultural pressure to demand the change that we need throughout our societies around the world. And where we can, to build the power of organised labour to make that difference at the point of production, at the point of service delivery, and at the point of distribution. And also on agency, we need to set the agenda. We need a plan not dependent on the vagaries of the markets or on the competition between nation states. And so for COP26, the Campaign Against Climate Change Trade Union Group has produced a special new report. This is Building a Workforce for the Climate Emergency. It shows how and why direct public investment and direct public ownership can and should build the workforce that's going to create the infrastructure for the low carbon or zero carbon economy in the world in a way that is rooted in solidarity and rooted in global justice, with no worker being left behind in the transition. Real people doing real work in the real quality jobs that have a direct effect on reducing emissions and reducing pollution in a way that solves the ecological crisis and our social justice issues together. Energy, public transport, food production, research and development and education. I commend it to everyone here today. Everyone has a really good protest, really good demonstration, and we can really feel quite proud about the network that have come together today, and we can take that forward into the future as we continue to campaign on this. Thanks everyone.
Thanks very much, Chris, that's great. So next we have speaker Ashley from the plastic-free larder, and Ashley will be followed by Viola Langley, who is going to speak on behalf of Let's Stop Aquin.
Oh, hello. I'm Ashley and this is Esther. We're from the package-free larder on Elm Grove and Zero Waste Portsmouth. If you don't know us, we're the first plastic-free supermarket in Portsmouth, and we've been open for just over a year now. We were completely crowdfunded, so in just 56 days, over 905 of you donated over £43,000. We opened during lockdown and we're run almost entirely by volunteers. And Zero Waste Portsmouth has hosted many events as well, educating people just how to make simple changes in your life, such as how to grow your own vegetables, making cleaning products, all sorts of things. At the package-free larder, we have over 60 volunteers now, so this is just a spontaneous shout out, as I can actually see quite a lot of you in the crowd today. So I wanted just to say hello and thank you and recognise how strong our community is when we work together against the climate crisis. It's almost a shame that we've had to call on our community and open our shop. We really do need bigger companies to work quicker, but nonetheless we're so proud of what we've achieved, and looking around it does fill me with positivity, and I'm really confident that we can make a difference. It's not about us today, it's about our planet, and thank you for being the change.
Thank you very much, Ashley, and great to have spontaneous speakers. So as I've said before, if you're feeling now you've got something you want to say, then please come up and tell us. So next we have Viola, who's going to be speaking from Let's Stop Aquin. After that, if there is...
before I start, can I just say thank you for everybody who's here today. Please give everybody a big clap, because this is unique and we are showing our solidarity. Now, some of you know me, I'm Viola. I'm the co-founder of Let's Stop Aquin. I'm very passionate about our planet, our plants, our people, and our place in the universe. Sounds funny, but I really do. Lying in bed recently, absorbing all the news about our climate crisis, some words came up to me. Wake up, wake up. This is an emergency. There is no way to escape. There's no planet B. Only when you really wake up are you aware of the truth. Climate change is here. It's staring us in the face. This makes us all feel quite uncomfortable, overpowered by the circumstances beyond our control. Or is it? This is how it seems when we first confronted Aquin, a seemingly unstoppable monstrosity. People used to say to me, this is too big to stop. They said it was a done deal. A year ago, starting with my co-founder Paula, I was often advised to drop the campaign. The scale was too enormous. A £1 billion project endorsed by top politicians, funded by bottomless pockets. It seemed an unsurmountable problem. A month later, 800 supporters, rallying to the cause. Now, 1 year later, 4,000 plus followers, and that is only Facebook, because we've got no idea how many people actually are following us. We have achieved so much. The done deal is not a done deal. The big plus of our campaign is the consensus shown by all political parties, at local level, councillors and MPs, united to stop this nonsense project. This must translate to national level. That is how we have to be, united in our efforts, putting aside our political, social and economic differences. People say about climate change, it's too late, it's too big. You may feel overwhelmed by it, but it's not too late, it's not too big. We will not be overwhelmed if we work together. I really truly believe in the power of people, our power. We can bring about change. We demand change. The people who worked together in our campaign Let's Stop Aquint have achieved so much. Above all, a united action, an environmentally damaging project for Portsmouth. I thank every single one of you who's here today. Any project damaging our environment is a danger to the planet. Whatever happens here in our city has an impact on a larger scale in the world and vice versa. Let's stop Aquint. Together we've done it, for now. Let's stop climate change. Together we can do it, and we must. We have no choice. So please, wake up, wake up.
My name's Joelle. I haven't planned anything to say, but I don't even live in Portsmouth. I live in Southampton, but nothing's going on there. So I came here and have been incredibly inspired by everybody. I just want to say like a note, because obviously this is a fight and it's emotional and it's difficult mentally, physically. It wears you down. The anger that we feel for the world can get to us, I think. It's definitely got to me my whole life. The anger that we feel for injustice can completely overwhelm us. So I just want to talk a little bit about like the positives that I see to try and uplift us a little bit into like what I've seen in my life. So I'm 27 and I started giving speeches about deforestation when I was 9. I started working for local environmental groups when I was a teenager and writing monthly newsletters for my school about climate change, about flooding, about extinction of animals, like all sorts of things every single month. And I used to think, why the hell are adults not doing a fucking thing about this thing, which is literally telling us that we're not going to have a future. We're learning about it in school, but nothing's coming, like nothing's being changed. And I used to question my parents, fight with my parents about why everything just seemed so normal. Nothing was changing my entire life, nothing seemed to change. And nobody seemed to talk about it. And I just felt completely alone with these issues, but I also didn't feel strong enough to do something like Greta and sit in front of a building every Friday. I was mentally really, really sad and got into a really bad mental state for years of my young adult life. A few years ago, when I ended up dropping out of uni to travel and to see the world afresh, my life completely changed. And so did the world, because that was in 2017 to 2018. And since then, since Greta started, since, if you know Alexandria Cortez in America, since she became pretty powerful, things started to change. And like my heart just, it melted. I've never felt more inspired and more hopeful than I do right now. And that is thanks to everybody who used their voice. I remember back in 2017, I used to want to shout, and I used to want to tell everyone, I don't care what you're doing in your life, I don't care what job you have, I don't care who you're with right now, I don't care about any of that. I want to hear your voice. I want to hear you stand up and speak about what you care about and what you feel inside, because that is the scariest thing to do, but it's also the most important, and that is what changes the world. And when people say that one person can't make a difference, every single person can make a difference. I am of the generation, the millennials, that were often hated by older generations and told that we were snowflakes, and that we complained a lot, and that we didn't know what real work was. I'm here to tell you, Gen Zs and everyone younger, millennials will always have your back. We're here for you, and we'll always be here for you. And I speak for everybody I know of my age group. We're really, really, really proud of the younger generations, and we will always be there for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joelle.
We need to save our world and stop climate change.
Of this school strike movement, especially from the Tory government, is that what are we actually doing? Because we don't come to these protests with solutions and climate science. And so some people would argue that we should just go back to school. We are often called the lost generation, but to those people, I ask them, what else? We are facing the biggest humanitarian crisis our world has ever seen. So what else do you expect me to do? I don't have a vote, I only have a voice, and I intend to use that voice to stand up for my planet. You tell us to leave it to the adults, but for how long? I personally can't sit here obediently and wait for you to pull some fossil fuel funded solution out of your Tory hat. And look at the makeup of COP, right? All white, well, majority white, majority upper class, and majority male. This is actually extremely tactical, because if they filled the conference with people who'd actually been affected by climate change, or people who would be affected by climate change, or frankly anyone who had the faintest idea what they were doing, we would be under no reason that our climate response is not enough. But if nothing else, it is proof that if you are not at the table, you are most likely on the menu. This is why I am fighting back. People don't often think of environmental issues as social justice, but it is. The climate is a feminist issue, it is a race issue, it is a class issue, and it is everybody's issue. This is why we need to stop the blah blah blah. We need action now, not by 2050, not by 2030, now. We need to stop paying fossil fuel companies to kill us and instead pay reparations to the global south, which through our corruption we have decimated. To all the leaders at COP, I say, if this COP fails, I will be back here again, and again, and again, and again, with the rest of my peers, until everyone, especially those in minority groups, is safe. Because, you know what? We're not all Greta. We are individuals who are going to have to grow up in a world you destroyed. So just you try and stop us. I implore you to make the hard decisions, to uproot the system and do what needs to be done. And then, just maybe we'll think about going back to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira, that was great. And Joelle is next.
Yeah, so we all know the UK is holding COP26 right now. Greta has called it a 2-week Greenwash Festival, and you know, that's the perfect summary of it. For those that don't know, Greenwash, it's the act of seeming to care about the environment but whilst actively destroying it. When we see things like big businesses going green or private jets using sustainable air fuel, we need to recognise and call out that greenwash, because it's just as harmful as fossil fuels. At COP, they again making pledges far into the future
taking no action when we are already on code red for humanity. COP is based on keeping business as usual, going whilst they claim to move growth to green growth. But there's nothing green about it. All growth must come to an end, because on a finite planet, there are not infinite resources. Business as usual got us into this mess, so trying to preserve it under any cost is simply committing us to death. In an emergency situation, you take the emergency response, and the breakdown of the climate is the biggest alarm we've ever heard. We know what we do in emergencies. We were taught it in school. You make sure everyone is safe and you put out the flames. But where we are today, fossil fuel companies are adding more fuel to the fire. Our banks are financing it whilst claiming to save for our future, and the government is standing idly by and commenting on the warmth of the flames. Our house is on fire, and it's the people of the global south who are stuck in that house. It's the people who have done little to contribute to climate change that are stuck in that house. It's the people in low-lying cities that will be stuck in that house. And it's those without an escape route that will be stuck in that house. And eventually, unless they fly to space, the politicians will be in that house too. Governments could intervene and get us out, but they don't. Because keeping the fire going is business as usual, and we must protect that at all costs. So here they are at the 26th meeting, still talking, still debating the science. But all the solutions are out there. We need to stop burning fossil fuels. We need to stop destroying our life support systems. And it is clear that all we need right now is the political will. And if they, in there and in governments across the world, if they don't have it, then we will create it. And if they don't hear us, we shout a bit louder. And if they don't see us, we make ourselves seen. Thank you for coming out today, despite COVID, and I think we all know the consequences of the upcoming policing and crime sentencing bill. And solidarity with everyone across the globe protesting today. Solidarity with Insulate Britain. 9 of their members will be at the Royal Courts of Justice later this month for telling the government to get on with the job they already promised us. So again, it's not like we don't have the solutions. They're all laid out for us. We need the political will. On Tuesday, there will be a council meeting behind me in Guildhall at 2 o'clock. I invite all of you to turn up and sit in the stalls. Bring your placards and let's make the political will. Let's be the will of the people. For so long, we've been excluded from decision making. And now it's time to bring back control. The only hope in solving the crisis is inside us. Power to the people.
Thank you very much, Selma and Peter from XR. And now we have Kimberly Barrett from Portsmouth Liberal Democrats.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. When I look across the Guildhall and see you all coming together for such an important cause, it gives me real hope for our combined future. We all need to be clear that we are facing a climate crisis, not just in this city or this country, but across the planet. And we need to make sure we are doing absolutely anything and everything we can to make this planet better for our children and for future generations. I am very proud to be the city's first cabinet member for climate change and the green recovery, as the climate crisis is the biggest issue we will face in our lifetime. And I am pleased that I now have the opportunity to be able to look at what the council is doing across many different areas and make the changes we need to take these steps forward to make sure that people can live happy, healthy lives. As an administration, we are developing a green strategy to increase trees and greenery in the city. And we must and are starting to reduce the impact of waste, reducing energy usage in the city, working to reduce the impact of cars and reducing the carbon impact on our own estate. We have been recognised recently as a Green Council, winning awards for solar panel installations and obtaining millions of pounds towards the Warmer Homes scheme. But it still isn't enough. I have recently announced that this year we will aim to set a carbon budget alongside the financial budget, because as local leaders we have an absolute responsibility to do everything everything we reasonably can around carbon reduction. I've been working across the various departments of the council to come up with comprehensive decarbonisation reports to identify what areas we need to work on and how our progress looks so far, so we can just get on with it. We are taking steps forward as a council, but we can always do more and we can always do better as a council. I'm really pleased to say that we have recently joined UK 100 and signed their very ambitious net zero pledge. This means that we will act sooner than the government's own requirements to make substantial progress in the next decade. We will lobby for greater powers and we will lobby for funding to go further, faster, because it needs to be done now, not later. That we will do everything we can in our power and influence to make reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, and we will work with our communities across the city and our green groups to build consensus around solutions. This should be something that everyone's involved in. It shouldn't just be us as councillors doing the job. We should get you all involved and listen to what you have to say. Our climate response needs to run through absolutely everything we do in our professional and personal lives, but we need to remember that if we are really going to see the impacts we need, it will need to be more than just small changes. Too often people only consider the financial cost and forget that there are other costs that are just important. These costs are our lives. It is the cost of our health, and it's also the cost of our beautiful planet. That is something we should not be willing to gamble on any level. So I will be working to identify the changes we need and work out how we will make them happen now. We must take people along with us on this journey as we all make changes together, and in all seriousness, some of these changes may be difficult ones. We will all have to make difficult decisions in the future and have some very difficult conversations. But surely it is all worth it to make sure that future generations and our planet have the chance to survive and thrive. So I encourage you all to continue on carrying on speaking up. We need to continue to lobby and advocate for change like you are all doing today. Please contact all of us councillors. Make sure that you get their pledge and your support. Lobby your MPs to get the funding we desperately need to make the changes across the council. Unfortunately, we do need the money and we have to try and get that from government, and they need to understand that they need to help us make these changes. It's not good enough. Continue to make your voices heard, be proud of what you are all doing today here. And I look forward to working alongside many of you, listening to your ideas, and thank you everyone today for the parts you are all playing in tackling this climate emergency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. That's great.
I don't know about you, but I am fed up. It's been 26 years of COP conferences and all we get is pledges and earnest words. And I'm sick of it. They can stick their pledges where the sun doesn't shine. It's absolute nonsense. And I'm sick of the ignorance because the mainstream media has not been reporting this problem adequately. That most people should be on this march with us, but because they're not told to care, they don't know the science, they think it's a joke. And I'm sick of that as well. The world is heating up, people are dying, and it's going to get a whole lot worse. They are never going to stop. We will have to tear it away from them. The fossil fuel industry wants to continue for as long as they can. They used to make people doubt the science. That doesn't work anymore. So their new tactic is basically to blame us, to blame Joe Public. It's worked so well that even people within our movement, within the Green movement, they've attacked our own. But the truth is we need system change. That's always been the truth. It always has been, it always will be. They also now believe, or want us to believe, that carbon offsetting or the mystical unproven carbon capture will fix everything, and they can keep going for the next 50 years and there won't be any problem. But the truth is we already have the answers, and it's not made up free market solutions. It's renewables, it's less consumption, it's a circular sustainable economy. But we need a government that agrees with the solutions. The Conservative Party, the Conservatives, literally don't give a shit about us. They're happy for us to swim in it, okay? So if they don't care about that, they certainly don't care about saving us from climate disaster. We need a new government that cares about people, that cares about justice, that cares about climate justice. I can see a new world, I know it's there, we just need to get there. Thank you.
And that's about the worst conservative background you can come from, because there is no reason for it. I also come from a group of people, including my friends, unfortunately, because I came from a working class background, except some very good friends in the centre there, who are quite the opposite, who are still climate change sceptics. And I spent a terrific amount of time, in fact I spent most days this week, just trying to communicate with literally 14 people, trying to convince them of the science. It is important. What we've done today, what you've done today, has attracted attention right through this town. It's made people think. Please do everything you can whenever bullshit is mentioned in your presence. Just make a gentle effort to challenge it. When Rees-Mogg or Boris stands up and tells us that we're doing fine, we've reduced our carbon output by 46%, our CO2 output. No, not at all. We've reduced it by about 6%. The other 40% we shifted out to China. And now we can point the finger at them. But I was taught a rule many years ago. When you point the finger at someone and blame them, before you open your mouth, stop and look at your own hand. Because one finger may be pointing forward, but three fingers are pointing at you. We're being told bullshit about China. China is way ahead of us in terms of technology, in terms of green technology, wind turbine manufacture, photovoltaic cells, all of it. We have to remember that ever since our school days, we've been indoctrinated with the great British Empire, how we were a force in the world, how we are good, China and the Russians are bad. We are the brainwashed ones. We have got to see through the lies. We've got to see through them. Because the psychology that's being used on us is dangerous. And unfortunately there are a lot of people who are falling for it. So challenge whenever people talk bullshit about China. They told us that Xi Jinping didn't come to the meeting. No, because he knew it was a circus. He knew it was going to be a circus. Look at Biden. How many cars did Biden flow? Reinforced limousines flown over. Do we want Xi Jinping to do that? No, we don't. He sent a delegation. Don't believe this bullshit that China is not participating. They're way ahead of us technologically. Just challenge bullshit whenever you can and do your best to persuade other people to come on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. That's great. Right, next we have Tim Shimon Chase from Green Party and Let Pompey Breathe. And Tim will be followed by Ellie.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming along and inviting me. Oh, I'm getting blown away here. So today is about addressing climate breakdown, but also I'm going to talk a little bit about air quality and how it ties back into this. So Portsmouth's got an air quality problem. We're actually being subjected to fumes all the time. It affects our health, causes asthma, dementia, heart disease, caused mainly by diesel engines. So the thing is, the solutions are right in front of us, and what I'm talking about is that the solutions are the same for climate breakdown, that we need to take it seriously and take the actions that are right in front of us. So we hear a lot about electric cars and so on, but the real solutions are rather less glamorous and more obvious. They're right in front of us. Active transport, it's walking, cycling and buses. So the thing is about air quality, the measures we've taken are sort of said, the government will put forth this measure to deal with it, but there's a failure at all levels of government. The measures that have been taken don't consider that all of these issues are interlinked, so they'll put in something for air quality, a half-hearted thing, but not thinking that the same thing is for addressing climate change, it's addressing social justice, it's for addressing biodiversity and the environment. So all these issues are interconnected, and the system we have now doesn't just separates them out into separate things, so that we don't actually have the full impact. So we need all the government to take it seriously and call our elected representatives to account. So what we need to do is make our voices heard, get out there, and so we need to take action at all levels, both like institutionally, because we've been told so much is done personally, but only go so far. We also need system change by changing the systems that are around us and the way we decide what policies get put forward. All right, thank you very much. Keep fighting and don't get too wet.
Thanks very much, Tim. Yes. So Ellie's here. She's gone. Okay.
Hi, I'm John Woods. I'm chair of the Trades Council, which is the local trade union body, and I bring solidarity and greetings from the trade union movement in Portsmouth. It's absolutely vital that trade unionists get fully involved in the climate change. Many of our unions have very good notions on climate change, but we could do better. Some equivocate over fossil fuels, and I think we need to absolutely be clear. We want to keep the oil, the gas and the coal in the ground, no more carbon, and actually all unions have to get behind that, and we have to fight for a just transition where no workers are left to struggle or lose their jobs. We protect workers, we bring the workers with us, but we absolutely tackle climate change. I think it's important that we know our enemy, and I think we need to be absolutely clear. Greta Thunberg is absolutely right. The COP26 is a global north greenwashing festival. They are promising things way down in the future. They're talking about net zero. We don't want net zero, we want complete zero. We want no carbon. That's what we need to be fighting for. And if anyone believes, and we need to know our enemy, because the Tories are not just vile people, and they are vile people. I mean, Boris Johnson, Priti Patel is a bully and wants to turn migrants back in the Channel and wants to see them drown. I mean, that's absolutely a vile, callous way to... So they are vile people, but they also stand up for a vile system, capitalism. They stand up for profits. They defend the oil industry. They defend the car industry. They look after the chief executives. They look after the profits. They defend a system that is driving climate change. And we have to say, we want to change the system. We want a system that's based on fairness and equality, and which puts people and the planet before profits. And I think we see a movement. Yesterday, 30,000 people marched in Glasgow. I think we also saw the refuse workers in Glasgow, members of the GMB union, out on strike and joining the protest. And it's absolutely vital that we fight the bosses, we fight our rulers, and we fight and we join and we support each other in the struggles. And I really think we have an amazing future ahead of us. I really think we can change the system, because if you think about it, together we can fight the system that is driving climate change, the system of capitalism. We can fight the system that oppresses and exploits 99% of the world's population. We all have a common interest in struggling and fighting. And we can also, together we have the power to build a new world based on cooperation, on respect, on humanity and on democracy. Together, another world is possible! Absolutely. Just one more chance and I'm going to leave it to the next speaker. Together we're unstoppable! Another world is possible! Together we're unstoppable! Together we're unstoppable! Together we're unstoppable! Solidarity, comrades, keep on fighting, we will win!
Thank you very much, John, that's great. And next we have Peter from South Sea XR, who'll be followed by Selma.
Hey everyone.
want to take you on a little history lesson today. So, yeah. 42 years ago, Margaret Thatcher here in the United Kingdom and Ronald Reagan in the United States started a war. They deregulated media, lowered taxes for the elite, and enabled the corporate capture of governments not only in the United Kingdom and the USA, but all over the Western world. They called this war capitalism. This war would... Thank you. Sorry. No. Can I get some extra time? This war would be waged not with physical weapons, but with the law. An ideological war using paper to make the economic system work for the 1% at the expense of nature and everybody else. Have no doubt, this thing that we call capitalism has not been this way forever. The system of how we engage with the economic world today is called neoliberalism, and it is young. 42 years of neoliberalism have brought us sewage in our rivers, catastrophic handling of the pandemic, causing tens of thousands of excess deaths, an economic crash caused by the bankers and paid for by working people, with leisure centre cuts, community centre cuts, welfare cuts, health system cuts, police cuts, and much, much more. Whilst only one banker was put in prison in the United States for this catastrophe, the rest given bonuses. This system has turned us into worshippers, but not of a god or any spiritual entity. We no longer work to help each other out, as would be encouraged by most popular religions. Instead, we work to make the 1%, this psychopathic 1%, richer. We must look into ourselves and answer that internal calling of this is not right, and believe in ourselves, believe in yourselves, believe in your... Good now? Yep. Believe in yourselves. You are as powerful as you think you are. Don't hope that someone else will fix it for you, and only you can be part of something bigger. Don't fall for the greenwash we're seeing at COP. If something says eco, ask how and why. Put pressure where it needs to be applied. Push for action, not words. Don't believe the climate deniers who now know they cannot any longer deny the science, but now use xenophobia to claim anything we do to fight climate change will be wiped out by China. It's utter crap. Let me give you some quick stats. Here are countries and their CO2 per capita. I picked out some interesting ones. For example, please beware per capita means per person. For example, Kuwait number 1. Qatar number 1. Kuwait number 6. Number 9, Saudi Arabia. Number 11, Australia. Number 14, the United States of America. And number 44, China. I implore you to Google these statistics yourselves. The USA under Reagan and the UK under Thatcher spent their time financialising the economy, commodifying our energy sectors, our banking sectors, our savings, and made it so fat cat bankers could gamble away our money at enormous costs, as shown during the 2008 financial crisis. They destroyed crucial core industries, destroyed worker lives. Yes, coal was not the future, but neither was making a unionised, skilled workforce redundant. There was another way. This was not done to cut carbon or move the UK forward. It was done to wage war on the workers and to destroy the trade union movement. They sold out the working class, they sold out minorities, they sold out disabled people, they sold out Caribbean migrants, they sold out European migrants. There's only one group left for them to sell out. I'll let you figure that one out. When Thatcher sold out the workers, they brought a second phase of this war on workers, calling it globalisation. Oh, it won't be much longer. This was a nice way of saying using slave labour to make things. What? Yeah. This was a nice way of saying it's using slave labour to make things. Who was there to accept the money of the greedy Western elites? Well, you might have guessed it, greedy China elites. I don't approve of the Chinese government. They are authoritarian and a lesson for what comes if we don't speak up. But even with taking on global manufacturing, they are 44th at emitting CO2 per capita. The USA is 11th. Just think about that. I'm almost done. This is not about China or Boris. This is about dismantling a system designed to wage war on us, to make us insecure, to keep us working longer hours. It is time to end our addiction with consumerism and to end this toxic system which is destroying nature, and give ourselves and nature the space it needs to heal and fix our planet. In summary, our government has waged a covert war on people, and we must resist. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Right, Selma, just a few words, okay?